Well, good morning again. Today, I'm speaking on a subject that I've had a lot of people ask me to speak on, actually over the years, and I've never written a talk on it. And it's that age-old subject of good and evil. Um, Many people have written on the subject. Many religions. Um, have a lot to say on the subject. And I particularly resonate with the writings of the author and the philosopher Aldous Huxley. I was introduced to his works when I was in seminary. So I want to read you what I feel is such a succinct quote on good and evil, what he says. He wrote, "Good is the separate self's conformity to, and finally annihilation in, the divine ground which gives it being." I'm going to read that again. Good is the separate self's conformity to, and finally annihilation in, the divine ground which gives it being. Evil is the intensification of separateness. The refusal to know that the divine ground exists. I'll read that again. Evil is the intensification of separateness, the refusal to know that the divine ground exists. So to tease that apart, to tease that out, he's saying that when our sense of separate self conforms into the divine ground of being, when it's annihilated into the divine ground of being, that is the highest good. And of course, to be gone into that divine ground, to be gone into the divine, is to say, I and the Father are one. I and the Mother are one. One heart, one mind, one life. And then on the other hand, he defines evil as intensifying separateness and ignoring the divine ground of being, turning away from the divine, turning away from love and from the light of consciousness that we call many names, God or Spirit. And, an inherent in his definition, he's saying that we are all beings of free will. We can move towards the divine ground of being or turn away from it. We get to choose in every moment. We get to choose every day. So I was thinking, what are examples of intensifying separateness? And they're very apparent in society. It happens with racism. It happens when there's an us and them, right? When there's our race and there's the other race. It happens with religious intolerance when, there's our religion and then there's those other religions. It happens with sexism, right? Or sexual orientation. There's ours and there's theirs. It happens with politics, our view and theirs. And so in all those ways, it's an intensifying separateness. And then there is the moving towards the divine ground of being, which is what we do here, what we've been doing all service. When we hear a beautiful song or a sacred chant, or we read Rumi, we read Hafiz, the mystic poets, or, the mystics of all ages and religions, we can hear their incredible joy that they feel in the movement towards the divine and in the experience of divine union. One of my favorite Christian mystics has always been Saint Teresa of Avila. And I want to read you one of my very favorite things, one of my favorite writings from her. She wrote, "Her heart is full of joy with love, for in the Lord her mind is stilled. She has renounced every selfish attachment and draws abiding joy and strength from the one within. She lives not for herself, but lives to serve the Lord of love in all, and swims across the sea of life, breasting its rough waves joyfully. I love that. You can feel the bliss that she feels in divine communion. And she describes the necessary steps on the spiritual journey, starting with stilling the mind so we can hear that inner inspiring spirit. And, she describes how as we spiritually mature, we become more and more free from selfish attachment. And as we feel our own divinity and we start to recognize the divine in everyone, our life reflects more and more a divine life of serving God in everyone, of blessing just effortlessly by being. That last sentence, she swims across the sea of life, breasting its rough waves joyfully. She's describing being continuously attuned to divine love, which and light, which gives her strength. It gives her energy and courage to meet whatever the world brings. And so, what she's describing, this is how we move towards good, towards the one presence and the one power, God, the good, omnipotent. Eckhart Tolle wrote, "You do not become good by trying to be good, but by finding the goodness that's already within you and allowing that goodness to emerge." So I am often doing a self-reflective practice, and I encourage you all to do this as well, to ask, where am I on this movement towards good or God? And at what pace am I moving? And sometimes, I feel like we have spiritual growth spurts in life. We have dry periods, we have plateaus, and then we have spiritual growth spurts in life. And when we're open, when we're interested, when we're humble, right? And we want self-growth, that's when we have those growth spurts. And then there's other times, for whatever reason, we might feel ourselves in more resistance. It actually can happen all within one day, right? Where we're open and then we're not. And so, sorry. There's a Hafiz poem that says, "We can come to God dressed for dancing or be carried on a stretcher to God's ward." I love that. When I think of especially my earlier life, maybe more in my 20s, I can see how I was carried on a stretcher to God's ward at times. And I'm happy to have matured now where I'm so willing and I'm interested in growth. And I see everything as an opportunity to evolve. So I'm paying attention. I don't have to be carried on a stretcher. Uh, and that's how it is when we give a lot of energy to our evolution. When Jesus said to seek the kingdom of heaven within first, and all things will be added unto thee, he's saying, come to God dressed for dancing. You know how it is when you're dressed for dancing. You're interested, you're excited, right? You're putting energy into it. It's a celebration, right? To give your life to this inner divine ground of being. Now, there's an annihilation into pure divine being that is an enormity of bliss and peace. It is peace beyond the mind's ability to comprehend, to even imagine. It's so much peace and bliss and grace and love. And we have free will to choose to explore that, to be interested in that, or to ignore that and just keep our focus outwardly, right, on getting and doing in the world. I think most people are on a continuum of interest in good. Some folks are pretty focused on the world, but they do want to live ethically. They want to do more good and less harm in the world. And that's really good. That's a good start. Fortunately, the major world religions, they all offer two aspects of teaching. And one is the mystical teachings of how we experience divine union. And the other is how we live ethically, how we express the good and do no harm. In Judaism and Christianity, we have the 10 Commandments, do not kill, do not steal. In Buddhism, we have the Noble Eightfold Path, right thinking, right action, right view, right livelihood. So even if we're not drawn to the mystical experience of union, being drawn to the ethical teachings, that moves us towards the divine ground of being. And without that, it's easy to move towards separation. We see it all around us. Charles Fillmore, he wrote in The Revealing Word, he defined evil this way. He said, that which is not of God, unreality, error, thought, a product of fallen human consciousness, negation. He said, to sin is to err. It's to not be attentive to divine love and to be ignoring the inner guidance and the promptings of higher consciousness. I love Aldous Huxley's book, The Perennial Philosophy. I highly recommend it. It's very rich. It's like the richest chocolate cake. You just read a little at a time. But he's got a great chapter on good and evil. And he quotes someone I'd never heard of, William Law, another philosopher and prolific writer. So I want to read you a quote from William Law. He wrote, "The difference between a good and a bad man does not lie in this, that the one wills that which is good and the other does not, but solely in this, that the one concurs with the living, inspiring Spirit of God within him, and the other resists it, and can be chargeable with evil only because he resists it." That's really a different view of evil. That's so different than evil is this somehow this outside force, to be afraid of. When I've just been, and I imagine you have been too, it's just been so painful watching this war in Ukraine. It's been so painful for me. I sometimes, it's just hard to bear even reading about it. But I truly believe that if Putin would concur, as William Law described, concur with the living, inspiring Spirit of God within him that is there, he would see the error of his ways and withdraw troops and end the war. So I invite you to hold that prayer with me. Hold that prayer. Anyone and everyone can awaken. All beings can at some point, in I don't know how many lives, but at some point they can turn towards the living, inspiring Spirit of God within. In Unity's view, and also Buddhism's view, we are born, and Hinduism's view, we are born with innate goodness, and we could never be born evil. We could never be originally sinful. We are innately of God, but we can ignore the inner guidance. We have free will to choose whether we consciously tune ourselves to the highest channel of our being or not. And through ignoring the inner spirit, we can lose touch with it. Another really important point that I want to mention on this subject is that inner connection to spirit can become deeply buried by a life of hardship, by a life of conditioning, right? And that's where we want to grow our compassion for those who cause suffering. Suffering gets passed on. Those that are suffering propagate suffering. Sometimes a person doesn't even know they're resisting the inner inspiring spirit because it's so buried. I told you a story last week of I'm loving Bonnie Raitt's new album, and on her album she's got the two amazing slow songs are true stories where she just was so moved by these news stories. She had to write songs about them, and I told you about one of them last week. Well, there's another one on her album that is so powerful, that's called Down the Hall, and it's about this man who's in prison for life. He took someone's life, and he's in prison for life, and he's been there a long time, and He's done a lot of work on himself. And at one point, he's in the infirmary. He's got a cold and he's in the infirmary. And he sees someone in the hospice wing walking down the hall, and they're all skin and bones, and they're just shuffling along, with the IV towards their room. And he asks the nurse, about that person, and she says, well, he's in hospice, but he's probably not going to be in there very long. And the man asks, well, is anyone coming to visit him? And the nurse says, no, no visitors are allowed at the end. But the truth is that really most have no one that would even come. And that breaks his heart. And so he asks if he could start coming and be with that man that's in hospice. And she allows for that, once he's feeling better. And he starts coming regularly and being with those who are dying. And through caring for them, which it's described in the song, it's so beautiful, through helping them die peacefully, it changes his life. It sets him free. It sets them free. And, Bonnie sings about how he's thinking that he can't give back the life he took, but he hopes when his time comes, he'll get a second look. He hopes he might be forgiven. Oh, my heart. It's such a powerful story of how at any time, we can move from separation back towards the inner spirit, towards love, and about how love redeems us and heals us, and it pulls us back into our connection with the divine ground of being. There's that beautiful scripture, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, does not boast, is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. I love that, that last line. I think the best. It keeps no record of wrongs. What I know for sure, like Oprah likes to say, what I know for sure is the Divine Mother, the source of all that is an immensity of love. And she keeps no record of wrongs and does not punish and is always, always ready to welcome us back into her loving arms that we might fully know our true nature as love. It's effortless forgiveness that we receive from that kind of infinite love. Fillmore wrote, apparent evil is the result of ignorance, and when truth is presented, the error disappears. When truth is presented, when love is presented. The man in prison, he found in himself a feeling of compassion for those people dying alone. He came a long way. And in caring for them, he discovered his innate goodness, the divine ground of his being. In life, we all have moments of being caught in the ego. The ego is just another name for being identified with a separate self. So we have moments of being hurt, right? Or being angry or being offended and moving towards separation. When there's a rift between you, you know how that feels between you and someone you love, that pain of separation. It's painful, especially if you're used to, the more you're used to resting in love, the more any separation is just, it's painful. And then when someone opens their heart back up, or something inspires you to open your heart back up and forgive, or offer forgiveness and receive forgiveness, there's love that's present again, and healing happens, and we feel unity again, just in the healing presence of love. Eckhart Tolle wrote, "There's only one perpetrator of evil on the planet, and that is human unconsciousness." That's a powerful truth. So what's the antidote? I was thinking, okay, what's the antidote? to unconsciousness. And that could be volumes, that could be many, many books. There are many, many books, but what came to me is that doing our best to not respond to evil or unconsciousness, that's a better word maybe, to not respond to unconsciousness with a reaction that is also unconscious, right? That is where our spiritual practice reaps fruit, right? To not react to unconsciousness with unconsciousness, but instead to stay centered in our connection or return to our centeredness that's clear, that brings clarity and insight and wisdom. I was walking in the park, Lithia Park, across the way the other day, and I was just like having this wonderful walking meditation, planting lotuses in the earth. And these three teenagers roar past me on three mountain bikes. And I mean, the trail is super narrow. I mean, they barely, kept from knocking me over. It was way too close for comfort. And, I felt this surge of irritation and anger because bike riding isn't allowed in the park, and all the signs say that you have to walk your bike. You get off your bike and walk it when you're in the park boundaries. So when up ahead, I reached those three teens, and at this point, they were sitting on a picnic table smoking, and their bikes were there. And um, at this point, I had really, done some breathing. I let go of that anger, and I felt pretty centered. And I wanted to share with them in a way that they could hear, not in a way that would bring immediate resistance to what I said. So I said, hey guys, did you know that when in the park, folks walk their bikes? Did you see the sign? And they all said, no, in unison. And we all had this long moment of eye contact, and I could see that they were deciding whether to see me as an enemy and just completely be in resistance and not listen to me, or if they might actually take to heart what I was saying. And I was inwardly emanating peace to encourage them to be open to me. And I don't know if they walked their bikes. I know I went ahead and they never came, but I think maybe that they did. I hope that they did. So we can meet unconsciousness without losing our centeredness, or we can regain it skillfully. And then, if there's any chance, if there's any openness, we can offer from a place of wanting to help educate or enlighten without attack or blame. That's an art, that's skillfulness. We can find a way to inspire greater consciousness in others and to keep a door open to communication. That's really key. And yeah, it takes a whole lot of patience, a whole lot. But we remember that people can only respond from their level of consciousness. Another thing that Tolle says that really helps to bring the compassion, that people can only respond from their level of consciousness. What they've learned, what they've experienced, what they've been taught, what they've discovered so far. I shared with you last month that my teacher used to always say, don't be discouraged by all the darkness or unconsciousness in the world. Just light your one candle and shine it bright. Shining our candle bright, what is that? That's being an example of someone moving towards the divine ground of being. Finding ways to educate, to enlighten. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I know you're all doing that. You're finding ways to educate and to enlighten others and to inspire their greater consciousness, and inspire them to awaken to the inner good in them and move away from the ways of selfishness and separateness. It's amazing how much you can evolve in one lifetime. When I think about, the selfishness in me as a teenager and young adult, and where I've come with effort, with the grace of great teachers and teachings. Also, our practice of continual forgiveness of ourselves and others, that's a movement towards good, towards the divine ground of being, just as Jesus forgave a mob for their blindness to their own darkness. They know not what they do. They're at their level of consciousness. I think, what I really want to say is that I think sometimes we think that evil is this it's like a power unto itself, that it's this scary power, the way they make, like in the superhero movies, the way they make the evil, monstrous, scary person. That that darkness has a power, but it doesn't. It's just the absence of light. It's just the absence of light. William Law, another quote from him, he wrote, in all the possibility of things, in all the possibility of things, there is and can be but one happiness and one misery. The one misery is nature and creature left to itself. The one happiness is the life, the light, the Spirit of God manifested in nature and creature. The one happiness is the life, the light, the love, and the Spirit within us manifested fully. So let's not be distracted or discouraged by the unconsciousness. Let's keep our light shining, keep our love expressing, our compassion expanding. And in that, know that we are living our best life, our most beautiful life. And that is enough. That is quite enough. So may you and may all beings merge into the divine ground of being, merge with God, the good, omnipotent. Bless you. Thank you.